80 years ago, in spring of 1945, concentration camps in Germany and Nazi-occupied territories were being liberated by Allied forces. World War II was finally coming to an end after 6 long years. What the Allies found at concentration camps was shocking. Starving men, women, and children who had been forced to live in appalling conditions. But what happened to the prisoners after they were liberated? How many made it home? Claire Bacala and Stéphanie Trouillard have produced a long-format documentary on France 24's website about two French women who were deported to a Ravensbrück concentration camp in Germany. We'll Make It Home Together tells a story of friendship in the worst of circumstances. And Claire is on set with us now to talk about the documentary. Claire, great to see you. What was a Ravensbrück concentration camp, and how many women from France ended up there?
So this was a concentration camp which was for women. Ravensbrück was Hitler's concentration camp for women. It was north of Berlin in a forested area known for freezing temperatures in winter. And over the course of the Second World War, 120,000 women and children passed through Ravensbrück concentration camp. Of that 120,000, there were women and children from various different countries. Around 8,000 women from France were deported to Ravensbrück, and most of them were resistance members, women who had resisted the German occupation, the Nazis in France. They had been arrested and deported for it. Many were tortured during their interrogations by German officers. And the two French women that we wrote about in our documentary, Stéphanie Trouillard and I, Suzanne and Simone. Now, they formed a very strong friendship while they were in the camps, and that's something that we found was very common among the women who were at Ravensbrück, as well as the other satellite camps where women prisoners were sent. It was a hellish experience. They lived in appalling conditions. They were used as slave labor in factories. They were forced to make weapons and military equipment for the German army. A quarter of the prisoners, of the women who went through Ravensbrück, did not survive. And yet, there were many stories that we found, and particularly this one between Suzanne and Simone, so these two French women, of real unbreakable bonds and this really strong friendship that they made. And that's what Stéphanie Trouillard and I decided to focus on in our online documentary, which of course is available in French and English on France 24's website.
So I'm curious, who were Suzanne and Simone, and why were they deported to Ravensbrück?
So Simone was in the resistance along with her brothers. She was from the Paris region. She was part of the Franco-British resistance network, the Sylvestre Farmer network. She was known as a courageous, lively, generous young woman. Suzanne had a different background. She was from a traditional Catholic family. She lived in a manor house in Brittany, actually in Saint-Marcel, which is where Stéphanie Trouillard, the France 24 journalist who asked if I'd like to work on this story with her, her mother is from Saint-Marcel. So part of our work took us back to Stéphanie's roots and back to Saint-Marcel. Suzanne was from there. Her family was the local wealthy family, and she found herself really on the front lines. In the summer of 1944, the Allies had landed on the beaches of Normandy, and fighting, big heavy fighting, broke out between the Resistance in Saint-Marcel and the Germans. She was arrested because she gave first aid to resistance members, so the Germans arrested her and deported her to Ravensbrück.
And so what happened at the end of the war, and did they make it home to France?
Well, Ravensbrück was liberated by the Soviets on April 30th, 1945, but Suzanne and Simone were actually no longer there. The Germans had evacuated many of the prisoners from the camp. As the Allies were getting closer, they evacuated, not all of the prisoners, but they evacuated many of them, and they actually destroyed a lot of the archives. They were trying to cover up their crimes. So Suzanne and Simone had actually found themselves in Terezin, which is in former Czechoslovakia. The Nazis had turned that town into a Jewish ghetto. But at the end of the war, it was chaos. And there were prisoners who were not Jewish, but who were arriving from all over the place and kind of coming and getting into Terezin. It was known as the Theresienstadt ghetto. So Theresienstadt is the German name for Terezin. And on the 8th of May, 1945, Suzanne and Simone found themselves there. And that's where they lived the liberation, victory in Europe. Now, they were both seriously ill. They were very far from home. And as to whether they made it back to France, I will let our viewers go and look on our online documentary. It's called We'll Make It Home Together.
How long is it?
It's an online, it's basically a web page. You can see it up on the screen there. Suzanne and Simone, A Friendship at Ravensbrück. And it's it's a web page with a whole mix of archive footage that I filmed with Stephanie at the site of the Ravensbrück camp in Terezin as well. It's a mix of a whole lot of different multimedia ways to learn about the Second World War and the power of female friendships and resilience.
Okay, we'll check it out. Thank you very much for that, Claire Bacala there.